Welcome back to the Cyclone Fanatic pregame show. I'm your host, Leah Nelson. I'll be alongside Chris Williams in a little bit. We got a lot to talk about with Iowa State and Utah coming up this next week, but let's thank a few of our sponsors. First, we've got Fairway Meat Market. If you guys love meat like I do, you got to hit up Fairway Meat Market and Grocery and Ames. They've got all different kinds of meats. I can't wait to hear about the meat festival that happened last week. I heard it was a hoot. And then we've got our friends over at McFarland. They have been putting in work this season. They're great. Dr. Wormy, Dr. Greenwald. You can always count on them for all of your needs. But we've got lots to talk about this week. And so I'm excited. There you are.
Hello. I'm here.
Hello, you're here. Oh, I was like, there's two of them.
I'm here. I'm here. This is the good version right here.
Yes, that's nice.
Thanks for that beautiful introduction. We did have a great Fairway fourth annual Festival of Meats. I will tell you, we did something for the first time. We went all pork. Wow. It was all pork on the menu, and the pork belly, we absolutely knocked the pork belly out of the park.
I saw lots of videos. It looked delicious.
It was a wild time.
Your friend was like touching all of the meat when he was turning them on the grill or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, what, you got a problem with that?
Well,
you sound like my wife.
I was like, which one am I going to eat? And then I'm like, not that one. Just turn them over.
You cook it long enough and it burns off all the germs. You don't even got to worry about it.
I guess that's true.
I do want to thank our friends at Centurion Stone of Iowa. Hey, we've had a couple of people send pictures. They've got new stone fireplaces put in. If you are looking forward to, when tax season comes around, putting some money back in your home with your refund, remember, my friends, it's Centurion Stone of Iowa. Or you could also take that tax return money and go to the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, Cyclones2Ireland.com. Put your money towards that, Cyclones2Ireland.com. Big one this weekend. Miss Leah Nelson, as the Cyclones are at Utah for the first time as a Big 12 team. Iowa State's 3-0 all time against Utah. They actually 3-1, excuse me. They lost. We all remember that brutal game in the Paul Rhodes era where Utah hung up like 50, it felt like, on Iowa State. But nonetheless, this is a massive football game at 6:30 on Saturday night.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
Well, I'm kind of trying to debate if I want to ask my usual very first question or if I want to change it up. And I think I kind of want to change it up.
Didn't change it up. It's your world.
Well, I just want, obviously this is a huge week for Big 12 across the board. And I kind of want you to just run through some of the scenarios on what could happen. What if teams win, if teams lose, if Iowa State can make it to the Big 12 tournament, you get what or the championship.
Yeah. It's confusing. To make it simple, Iowa State fans want Kansas to beat Colorado, and you want Arizona State to beat BYU. That's the best case scenario for Iowa State. There's a lot of honestly, we could do an entire show on this because it's so complicated, but that is the easiest way to sum it up. You want to win your last two games, and you want those teams to lose as much as possible.
Perfect.
Dumbing it down for you right there.
Love it. That's exactly what I wanted you to do.
Yeah, root for Kansas and root for Arizona State. That's what Iowa State takes care of business, and we got a puncher's chance next week to get into the Big 12 championship.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
That was the exact answer I was looking for.
Good. Well, a lot of these guys, they got 15 scenarios and they're drawing them out. And it's fun. I'm glad that we're all in this spot where you can talk about this, but the way I look at it, and maybe I'm a curmudgeon here, Iowa State lost its ability and lost its opportunity to control its own destiny. Shouldn't have lost those two games, right? We all knew it. They lost them. So, control what you can control. That's the next two games, and we'll see how everything else plays out. But, I mean, look at it. What I just laid out to you is not that crazy because Arizona State's a 4-point favorite over BYU, and Kansas is a 3-point underdog to Colorado. So they're both coin toss type games. It's not crazy to think on Saturday Iowa State will be controlling its own destiny going into the Kansas State game. So that's best case scenario, but you got to win at Utah first. That's the number one thing I'm concerned about for the Cyclones.
Well, speaking of Utah, what can we expect from them come Saturday?
Well, pick number one in the preseason poll, which means nothing. Oklahoma State was picked up there too. Both of these teams have been a massive disappointment. But the thing about Utah, they're kind of like the polar opposite of Kansas, but they've had a similar season where they have all these games. I think 4 games they've lost by 1 possession. They've lost 6 games in a row, but they really haven't been blown out in any of them. It's because they play really good defense. Kansas, on the other hand, plays really good offense, not great defense. And that's what had kept them into those games. So, to just blindly look at records and say, well, this should be a cakewalk for the Cyclones would be a very foolish thing for anybody to do. I think most people in our audience are smart. They understand football. Tough place to play. Anytime you got to travel west, it's tough. And you're getting them on a senior night, right? So there could be specific emotions involved in that type of stuff. And this is a culture type program with Kyle Whittingham. They're not going to roll over and die. This is a football team that really struggles to run. They are one of the worst running teams in the Big 12 Conference. I think they only ran for like 27 yards last week against Colorado. So I'm expecting they'll test Iowa State on the ground because Iowa State's not a great rush defense, but I like that in Iowa State's matchup. I've said it all year. I'll put Iowa State's secondary up against any quarterback in the league. I continue to believe that. If Iowa State can get this team to be truly one-dimensional like they were last week against Colorado, I see Iowa State forcing some turnovers in this one, and defensively, Iowa State could be in a pretty decent spot. As far as Utah's defense goes, they're really good. Didn't show it last week against Colorado, but Colorado's offense is good enough where it makes a lot of people look foolish. But Matt Campbell said this week that he thinks Utah's the best defense Iowa State will have played all year, which I believe him. I mean, I again, it's just hard. Like you can't tell necessarily by their record. That's not really an indictment on their defense. If you watched Utah a lot, they've really struggled offensively since Cam Rising went out, their quarterback, been without their leader for the majority of the year, and it's been really tough for this team to bounce back from that. They did have a kid last week. You guys might remember him, Zach Wilson, the former BYU quarterback, was a top 3 draft pick. It's his little brother who will be quarterbacking Utah. But he will throw the interception. He's thrown 11 interceptions on the year. So if Iowa State, again, can make them one-dimensional, that's a good thing for the Cyclones going deep into this game.
So if you were Matt Campbell, how would you keep Iowa State motivated this week? I mean, they're coming off of a win, but still, like, there's a lot of pressure, a lot on the table. I like this spot for Iowa State. Leah, this just feels like the Kansas State game last year. Campbell's teams are really good on the road. I could almost argue they've been better traditionally on the road than they have been at home sometimes. I don't see a problem at all. I really don't as far as the motivation goes. The seasons are long, and Iowa State's had so many injuries, and more last week, right? We didn't see Caleb Brzezina. J.R. Singleton went out, so more all on the defensive side, of course, because that's just kind of how this season has gone. But yeah, everything is there to play for. Like if you're an Iowa State Cyclone and you're not ready for this one, like what are we doing here? Win 2 games, have a little bit of help, and you win 3 games and you're in the college football playoff, for God's sake. So like it's all there. And again, I don't know what it is about Campbell's teams on the road, but they play really well away from home. And I fully expect that on Saturday night as well. I think it's way easier, again, from perspective that it's easier to play away because everything's against you. And that little, everyone's against me, I'm going to show them as an underdog, or I'm going to show them what I can do when they don't want you to win is kind of fun and addicting.
Absolutely.
So I agree with your statement on Iowa State plays better at away games. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's
also just so much fewer distractions. Mm-hmm. I've heard from players that have told me it's the us against the world. And again, I just think, I think Whittingham's a really good coach. He's one of my guys I have probably the most respect for in the entire business. But there's also this deal in this portal era where everybody's paid. I don't know. Have they checked out at all? Because there's really nothing to play for. If you're Utah, you went into the season wanting to win a national championship. You're 1-6 in the league.
That's tough.
He said in his press conference, he said all the right things this week that, our guys are still carrying their lunch pail and all those cliches and stuff like that. And I don't doubt him. Like, they played hard last week against Colorado. I watched that game a couple times. But you have one team that has everything to play for. You have one team that has nothing to play for. I can't imagine they're going to have a hot of a crowd as they normally would for a senior night in Salt Lake City. So I think all the intangibles here are in Iowa State's favor.
I agree. I was gonna ask you, in the past, Iowa State, the games that Iowa State should win, they sometimes struggle with. But I'm feeling pretty confident. Like, I don't think there's going to be anything stepping in their way. I say that now and then watch, I don't want to jinx it, but I think they're going to be all right. I think they see it in sight, like the Big 12 championship. And so I think they're going to come out pretty strong. Which
I do too. The matchup is pretty good too, in the sense of, like, when you go strength on strength, that if you look at what Colorado did well last week against Utah, while the schemes are vastly different, Colorado runs much more of a spread. Iowa State will play a lot more tight ends and that sort of thing. Utah's secondary really struggled with those elite wide receivers that Colorado has. And I look at this from an offensive standpoint. Again, I think Iowa State's offense is going to be put on those guys. Go out and win the damn football game, just like they did last week. And give those guys credit. They went out with a 7.5 minute drive and absolutely, put Cincinnati into a sleeper hole when they needed to. I think that this matches up well in that sense for Iowa State. The key for me, again, it's going to be on Iowa State's defense. And I know I keep going back to this, and it's the weirdest thing because they're the best scoring defense in the Big 12 Conference. But we've seen them be so bad against the run, and if they can just do to Utah what they did last week with Cincinnati, which is like you allowed them to run, but you you were just good enough to make them do stupid things in a couple of spots. If they can just be okay against the run, they don't even have to do what Colorado did. I'm telling you, this Wilson kid's going to go out and throw some interceptions. Iowa State's defensive backs are really good. If they can get 2 interceptions on this kid, Iowa State's coming home with 9 wins, looking to go 10-2 for the first time in school history. That to me is the key. You just can't be horrible on the ground. But I like the fact that this kid isn't a running quarterback. It's those damn running quarterbacks that give Iowa State problems. And this kid is not that. I love Iowa State this week.
Love that. Look at that. Positivity.
Look at me.
What's your score prediction for this week?
I hadn't even thought about it. I should have had that jotted down. Well, let's talk through it because my gut says, good defense on Utah, lower scoring game. I'm going to go Iowa State wins this thing 24-17. How about that? 24-17. No, actually, you know what? 24-14. I'm going to say Iowa State covers the spread in this one. 24-14. What about you?
I had 28-21.
Oh, well, we're close.
Yeah,
we're really close. Have you picked against the Cyclones all year?
No, and I would never, even if they were going against like Oregon. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I love it. This is good. This is a good vibe. This is a good vibe we've got going on. No, I'm
feeling good. And you're not going to be here this weekend, are you?
No, Woody will be here for me. I'm going to be.
Everyone loved Woody.
He's better than me. I told him after the show, I go, you and Leah are better than me. It's a better mix. Everybody's tired of hearing from me. They don't want anything more. So you guys just take it and have fun and run with it. I also want to remind everybody that we start basketball next week. Are you ready?
I'm so pumped.
All right. We start basketball next week. We're going to be doing pregame and postgame for the men and women for the big games. We'll do all the Big 12 games, but for the big men's games starting on Monday and for the big women's games, which start on Thursday, they play number 1 South Carolina on Thanksgiving Day.
That's so exciting.
Here we go. Let's get after it. It is crossover season. Next week, one of the all-time crazy weeks in Cyclone Fanatic history. Maui Invitational. You have 2 football games, women's basketball versus number 1 South Carolina, and wrestling versus Iowa, all within 7 days of one another. One of the wildest weeks of all time.
I'm pumped.
I do too.
You've got to be pumped.
I love it. This is what I live for. I don't freaking want to have those days off in June. Let's go. Iowa State going 9-2 this week, winning at Utah.
Period.
Let's get after it.
Period. Well, have fun this weekend. I'll miss you guys, but tune in to see me and Woody hang out.
You guys you'll do a great job. Have fun with it.
Thanks so much. All right. See you, everyone.